Hello and welcome to Amiga Art School. I'm sorry it's been a little while, but I've been very pleased to see that some of you have been posting some lovely work on WhatsApp and other forms of social media. So hopefully the videos you have seen so far have provided a useful stimulus. And I wanted to add to that today by showing you a few techniques using watercolour, but introducing some other materials as well, and hopefully you'll feel as though it might free you up a bit, try to experiment a bit more, and generally have some fun. So this is our subject matter for today, and obviously it's a floral still life, but the techniques I'm going to be showing you could be applied to anything. So, you know, if you're more interested in the view out of your window, or you're getting out and about now and you're going to do some landscape drawings or something, then the techniques that I'm going to show you can easily be replicated in any other form. I'd like to try a couple of approaches, and the first one is going to be the positive shape on a white background, and then the other would be having a quite intense background. But the thing I'd like to talk to you about is very much how you start the drawing, or the painting rather, and that is often dictated by the drawing medium you use. So, you know, obviously if you use a very sharp 2B pencil, that might mean you're going to draw quite a detailed piece. Whereas if you use something that's a bit cruder, say like a charcoal pencil or graphite stick, or maybe an oil pastel, even some ink, a dip pen, you're going to get a slightly different result. So I want to try all three on the paper and see if you can see some kind of difference. And then in terms of colour, we've got French ultramarine, Hooker's green. I found this bright green recently, which I've been using and which is quite useful as well, but I could easily do without it and use lemon yellow or cadmium yellow. And then I've got some purple or mauve here, which I might augment with some rose madder, because that colour's not quite right for the flowers. And a bit of indigo, just in case I want to make something a bit richer, a bit darker, further into the piece. Okay, so let me just begin by drawing with the oil pastel. And I'm only going to draw an outline. So it's almost like the silhouette of the subject rather than the interior of it. And I mean, it's quite a complicated arrangement. There's lots of things going on here, but again, I want to keep it quite simple and not get too worried about all of the little details. Okay, so let's try using the graphite stick now, which gives another sort of line. I'm very fond of this particular pencil, and you can really sort of get quite a variety of marks, and you can put a little bit of extra weight on it and so forth, and it changes the character of the line. And now I'm going to try using some ink and see how that gives me a different line as well. So I'm not suggesting you necessarily put all of these things into one study, but you might want to try several pictures and use a different starting point. Because like I say, the way the drawing goes down very often affects the painting. I think the ink sort of lends itself a little bit more to an accurate result rather than perhaps using the rather blunt graphite stick, for instance. But either way, I'm working fairly quickly, both for the sake of the camera, but also to try and get some urgency into the picture, into the marks I'm making. And as often happens, the pen's not behaving very well, but it's come back to life again. Okay, so that's a lot of the flowers drawn. Now I can perhaps put on the vase that they're sat in. And I'm just trying to get a sort of general round look. I'm not going to be too concerned if it looks as though it's slightly tipping over. And the water comes down. Right, okay, so the ink's not quite dried, so I'm just going to give that a little bit of a pressing with some towel, and then I can begin painting. So I quite like starting with the darker shades, and there's a lot of shadow to the left of the arrangement. So I'm going to start there with the very heavy dark greens down here. Whereas on the other side, a lot of the leaves, because they're nearer the window, have got a lot more light in them. So this is that bright green I was telling you about earlier. And I think I didn't draw it particularly well, so I'm slightly correcting it in the paint. Of course, with ink, it does tend to come through quite strongly, whereas with, say, the graphite stick, you probably lose the line to a certain extent. So there's another difference to consider. If you're going to use ink, you need to make sure you perhaps work a little bit more accurately than I've done. So while I've got the green here, I may as well just put the flower stems as they go into the water as well. And of course it all gets a little bit mysterious because everything gets squashed up, and then either the water or the edge of the vase sort of changes the shape of things. But then as they come out of that sort of massive foliage there, you can start to see a few of the stems, which you can paint more accurately perhaps. But again, a bit of a wobble on them because of the distortion of the glass and the water. And don't be afraid of keep adding more colour. You know, you can keep dropping it in wet on wet. So it's really become quite a puddle there. And no harm in getting a bit of colour in there as well, because you know, so it's a bit of reflected light coming from above, and the water making everything slightly more smeary at the bottom. Okay, so we can now try to put some colour on the flowers. The roses, they're not ideal because they're white roses, so you can't see them particularly well. But they've got a bit of a green to them, so they're sort of yellow stroke green. And this is where having a good Holden line, you know, a strong outline, is quite useful because that helps define the shape. You don't have to work hard in putting lots of colour down because the line will help you. So that's that pen and ink line. You can really see it shining through the paintwork here. So again, that is an advantage. It really shows your drawing quite nicely. So while I've got this greeny colour, I'm just sort of seeing if there's other opportunities to use it elsewhere. Okay, so that's looking as though it's pretty much done in terms of the green. And I'll just mix up a colour for the, I don't know what they are, I suppose they're sort of wallflowers or something. Or mini delphiniums, maybe that's what they are. But yes, just trying to get the shape of them without fussing too much. And if you want to sort of define a sort of petal and so forth, you can just leave a little bit of a white gap here and there just to give it a slightly more definition. So yeah, this is the mixture of that manufactured mauve with some rose madder added just to give it a little bit more softness and pinkness, which mauve doesn't have. A bit more over here. Just to try and give it a bit more density in the centre here. Quite like the way the paint is separating slightly. I don't know if you can see that, but it's become slightly granulated. That often happens with the French ultramarine, which I always think is quite effective. Okay, well I think that's more or less done. I might put a bit of a shadow underneath, just to give it a feeling of substance. But otherwise, I'm really pleased with that.